Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast, and we are kicking off this work week, Nate, with a pretty decent size Monday night slate here. And this one, we're going to be looking at the Bulls and the Hornets, a couple of teams that we are very interested in. Make sure you do check out Nate's great article up on playpicks.com, has those best bets and player props for you, and like and subscribe to that page, as we've got a couple other videos up for you today, as we always do with that player props video and one other game. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yep, Monday night slate here. We get back into it. The Magic are plus 14 with half their team questionable tonight at Philly. The Nuggets are plus 7.5. We were still waiting to see if Jokic can come back. They're at Miami, and we will break down that game in a separate video. Pacers plus 2.5 at the Wolves. That spread has been shrinking. The Thunder plus 2.5 at Rockets. Cavs are plus 6 at Mavericks. Wizards minus 3 at Spurs. Blazers plus 7 at Jazz. And those Pelicans plus 6.5 at the Clippers. But we are talking here about the Charlotte Hornets, who are plus 5.5 at Chicago, total sitting at 225. Charlotte coming off a surprising overtime loss at Houston after they were riding pretty high, scored some big wins, including one at Washington last week. They are still 8-2 in their last 10 and seventh best offensive rating in that span. I think they're still a very good team on the rise. Just got PJ Washington back. It's a big piece of what they do. And I think that kind of loss gets young players' attention that say, hey, we just lost to one of the worst teams in the NBA. Let's rein it in, focus on competing here in Chicago. And that's the key word here, because just 5 or 6 points is too much for this Hornets team to be getting. You're looking at plus 180 on the money line. I don't really hate that as in terms of value, because this game's a toss-up in my mind. Chicago has been sputtering, and getting Nikola Vucevic back has not helped too much in their last 5 games. They're fifth in defensive rating still, but 2-3 straight up and against the spread. Their offense has been dreadful in their last 3 home games, 28th in rating, true shooting percentage, 28th in net rating. They're 26th in pace. Their games are averaging just 203 in that span. They've gone under in 6 of 10 at home, 6 of their last 10 overall. So there is some indication for an under here. I'm a little wary just because of the blinding pace that the Hornets play on, that they could get this game over. But the last 4 meetings between these teams in Chicago have gone under. More importantly, 7 of the last 8 between these teams in Chicago, the underdog has straight up won. So to my point there, I think the Hornets could easily win this game, and I think they will compete. And we'll get it down to the wire so that they easily cover 5.5. Or you can tease them up with the other game we're going to talk about and feel really good about them at about 9.5.
Yeah, it feels like a teasing kind of day in some places. I like some of these favorites, and I think that there's some good spreads for for teasing down favorites. But in this one, yeah, I don't trust the Bulls right now as much as I trust the Hornets. And we were talking about it, the Hornets and their sort of streakiness throughout the season, starting really hot, turning a little bit cold, just getting some bad losses, and then turning things around, as you mentioned, as of late, since that pretty bad loss to Houston. I mean, Houston has to win at some point, so whatever, kudos to them. But yeah, that was a bad game for Charlotte in terms of showing how the holes on their defense were too much for them to overcome with just straight offense. So to your point, they've become actually a good NBA team at this point, because they've dropped their defensive rating a ton in the last 10, and it's resulted in 8 of those wins. In those 10 games. You look at Chicago, and it's the complete opposite, where they started in a way that had us going, is this defense sustainable? Most people said not to this extent, but you've got to think that they're going to be as good on offense. Well, they haven't been as good on offense, and their defense has definitely regressed back to what we think it probably is more likely, around, middle of the pack than top 5. So, in the first 11 games of the season or so, they were about in that top 5 in defensive rating. They've dropped down to about 11th there in their last 10 games over the course of the last 10 10, they're 11th in defensive rating, so a big drop there, and then a big drop in offense as well, which is surprising when you see that they've had Vooch back for 5 of those games. You thought maybe they would increase their rebounding, they'd increase some of their second chance points and things of that nature. That has not been the case at all for them. And it's almost seems like they need to really focus on going through their, well, let's call them 3 guards at this point in terms of Caruso as that 3rd guard in the rotation that's playing really, really solid minutes for them. But, I'm scared of the total, but I'm not scared of taking Charlotte in this one. If you want to just stick to this game, you might as well take the money line because this one's going to come down to the wire, in my opinion, as well. But if you do like a tease, like you said, I really want to get that Miami Heat spread down a little bit against the Nuggets as we wait to see if Jokic plays. But in the meantime, I would consider teasing these two games together, or perhaps to your point, taking the under in this one, teasing that up a bit, and then grabbing the Hornets there as well, because I don't think this is a double-digit game by any means.
Yeah, and I don't think the Hornets will be able to push this game over by just scoring at will, because the things they do well, Chicago is still denying. They're 6th in points paint points allowed. They're allowing the fewest assists per game still, 7th fewest threes. And Charlotte, during this 10-game 8-2 stretch, they're 6th in percentage of paint points and 9th in points off threes. So that's how they're getting their buckets. And I would look at the individual matchup here between LaMelo and Lonzo, always an intriguing matchup. You look at their separate PRA props here. LaMelo, 35.5, which is just about what he's averaging in this 10-game span, 18, 9, and 9. But I think he takes a little bit of a step down against this defense and against his brother, who's been playing lights-out defense all year. He's, sort of got the better of Lonzo in their 2 meetings last year. Certainly Lonzo's aware of that. He still only topped out at 31 PRA, though, in those meetings. Whereas Lonzo, in his second meeting after, maybe taking some slack for letting his little brother get him, his usage rate jumped up to 21%, which is much higher for him than usual. So I would be more intrigued to taking over 22.5 for him and the under on LaMelo if you're going to look at those props there for just a little fun in that brotherly matchup.
Yeah, I'm going big bro. If I have to take anybody in this one, that seems to be the case. As a big brother myself, I know I would never allow a younger sibling to score more than me in this game. I think you'll see him on LaMelo to that point. I think I feel pretty good about Lonzo's stats as well. I think this is going to be, even if there's not as much efficiency on offense as we haven't seen, especially from the Bulls as of late, I do still think that the pace that the Hornets play at will allow them to sort of get a couple of those transition points. If they keep at that pace. They played at the 2nd fastest pace in the league pretty much all season, and I don't know why they would they're going to bring that against a Bulls team that does stop that well, that gets back in transition, and that tries to keep it a little bit more in the half court. And so I think, they're going to be able to, the Bulls are going to at least be able to assert their will to that extent in terms of being at home, controlling the pace a little bit more, and keeping the Hornets from running and gunning to that extent, which should keep the offense down a little bit. But I do still feel pretty good about the Hornets getting all of those points, as we mentioned. So going to continue to eye them in this one more than anything else. But that is all the time that we have for this one, Nate. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Got a couple other videos up for you today. Until we see you next, happy betting.